Excellent. I think we are go. Welcome everybody to this session, this webinar brought to you by Qure and Hardian Health. I'm Dr. Hugh Harvey, Managing Director at Hardian. We're joined by Surabhi from Qure, and we're going to be talking about health economics. So we can only do that with health economists on the panel. So it's my great pleasure to welcome two such professionals. We've got Ohde from Qure and Lucy Gregory, who's from Hardian. And in this session, we're going to be having a bit of a deeper look at what health economics is, why you need it, how you do it, and what the whole point of it all is. Because it tends to be something that is left till last by companies trying to sell to systems such as the NHS. Everyone knows about regulatory approval, everyone knows about clinical evidence. Not everyone really pays attention to whether or not their solution actually has a value, an economic value attached to it. So that's what we'll be discussing today in this session. We will be taking some questions and things like that from the audience as well as we go along. I believe there's a chat box you can type into, so we will have a look at some of those. But for now, we'll get stuck into it. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, Lucy and Anna, as we answer questions. But the first question I'm going to pose to Lucy. Can you, for the audience who might not have any clue, what is health economics?
Thanks, Hugh. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy, one of the health economists at Hardian. Health economics really is concerned with the efficient use and allocation of resources within healthcare systems, where demands for healthcare are infinite, but the resources that we have to meet those demands are finite. So you're really looking at ways in which we can empower decision makers to make decisions where we are efficiently allocating resources to kind of balance that kind of core foundation problem of meeting these infinite demands. But in the case of kind of AI and specific health interventions, health economics sits within health economics and outcomes research, which is really, yes, looking at evaluating specific technologies through outcomes research. So, for instance, looking at data on specific patient outcomes and clinical outcomes, and then using data that's collected on those specific outcomes, and then synthesizing those in health economic models to demonstrate whether these interventions are worth anyone's money or not.
And Anna, please do introduce yourself. How does one become the health economist, or as you are, health econometricist? How do you say it?
Econometrician, yes.
Econometrician, that's the one.
Hi, I'm Anna Ohde, and I'm a senior health economist with more than 15 years experience working in the NHS, conducting economic analysis and leading advanced analytic teams in commissioning environments. I mean, typically the sort of health economics analysis that I would do is using linked data sets from different settings, and detailed data allows you to build models, which are econometrics, which are basically mathematics, statistics, and money and money into those data sets, and then you just model and conduct marginal analysis. That's a sort of economic models that exist as well.
And you've been doing modelling for not just technologies, you've been doing it for pharmaceuticals as well, is that right?
No, I've been doing models in commissioning environments. That means when decision makers in the NHS and policy developments want to know whether it's worth investing in something, then that's when they usually come to me and say, Anna, we used to have £20 million, sorry. Now we have 10. What do we do with them? How do we allocate? And then that's where all the data comes into place. Really, the most pressing thing is getting the data and getting accurate data to fit those models, because the models are for us for as economists are the tooling kits, our tools that help us be systematic, consistent, and robust. And but those models are only as good as your data. So I always emphasize the need for good data. It's not just about the modeling; it's about what fits them.
So it really is an evidence-based practice. Requires good quality data. Requires people who know what they're doing in terms of building these models. And we're seeing now that lots of AI companies are approaching the NHS for sales, for commercial opportunities, as obviously they're intended to do. And they're hitting a sort of barrier where trusts or the NHS or the ICSs don't really know if the AI is worth it. They don't know what price to assign to it. They don't know what outcomes they're going to see. And we're seeing this reflected in some interesting reports and guidance coming out from NICE. So NICE have looked at several AI technologies, chest x-ray, stroke, lung cancer screening, things like that. And NICE so far haven't recommended any AI technologies for the full NICE thumbs up for use across the NHS, mainly because of a lack of this health economic evidence. So what's the takeaway if we look at these these outputs from NICE? What should AI companies be thinking? I'm going to direct this to Lucy. What does this guidance tell us that NICE wants to see?
I think very early on, kind of a health economic value proposition needs to be considered, because I think what's been a common thread across the latest NICE guidance is that there's not actually enough clinical effectiveness evidence in order to populate or demonstrate any potential cost effectiveness. And so to me, that really says that before, even a product's being finished or it's marketable, companies really should be conducting initial early health economic analysis with hypothetical data, based on internal estimates, conversations with clinicians, end users, to really work out exactly where the value of their product lies, and then conducting the clinical evidence and producing clinical evidence based upon that.
So use the early health economic modelling to design prospective data gathering within the NHS. Anna, would that fit in with what you said earlier about gathering good quality data?
Yes, it is, and I think that what I am observing is also that NICE is looking for more data that looks at the operational outcomes. How can we help the trust? And the clinical effectiveness as such is, things that help the trust with operational efficiencies as well. Because there are different types of clinical outcomes, as we know, and that is finding that data and being on the ground gathering that data. And we are normally in highly pressurized environments, and we know that. And getting people to actually collect that data and systematically and rigorously takes time and effort, and that is probably what is happening now. But yes, the evidence. Yeah, sorry.
So what does good look like here for health economics? What kind of level of health economic evidence do we believe that NICE would be looking for? I open that up to anyone who wants to reply, or perhaps Lucy.
So I think the gold standard that's set out by NICE is ultimately a cost effectiveness analysis where you're quantifying kind of non-monetary outcomes as well as the financial aspects of the intervention. However, conducting these kind of exercises are time consuming, and as Anna says, require a lot of data and good data, which for some companies right now is maybe not realistic. And so, and NICE recognize that, and so that's why they've set up the early value assessment kind of technology appraisal program, where they're kind of accepting, or they're willing to accept like a lower threshold of evidence, and to make a kind of temporary recommendation on whether they think the technology is viable or not. And if they deem it to be viable based on the limited amount of evidence, then they are recommending it for use in practice whilst more data is being collected. And that really goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of the use of early modelling. So although, yes, best or good healthy economic modelling would look like, cost-effective analysis with patient outcomes data, I think there's getting there is maybe more what it's about. And I think, that really starts with early economic modelling. And I think the very fact that NICE are accepting kind of early coded models as part of the EVA program is really like is a testament to the value of doing it.
Yeah. And Anna, it goes back to wanting to get that good quality data seems to be a massive barrier for external companies to the NHS. How should they go about liaising with the NHS to help gather that data? Because obviously we've said it takes time and we said it takes effort, but how do they get this kind of this modelling off the ground?
I think it's engaging with the trust and the organizations early on, and I think I always say before you start any new evaluation, think data and think economic evaluation sort of a year before. It's just making sure we are talking about this early. And I'm glad that Lucy mentioned about NICE being, because I think they are accepting that we are very pressed for time in terms of resources. And we know that there's been a shrinking in the workforce in the NHS. And NICE are recognizing really that we need to be a bit more pragmatic, because the gold standard of research controlled trials and things like that sometimes take time and a lot of effort. But truly it's about working on the ground with provider organization, engaging early, knowing the rules about data early. So when we start the data collection, we don't have any surprises about that, because there's normally, we need the data, and when we need the data is too late, or we don't meet the requirements of governance requires, IG regulations are very stringent in the NHS, so we need to be there before. Those are, the barriers over my 15 years in the NHS that we've always stumbled at, even within being in the NHS, not being an external organization, getting that data is extremely tough. Maybe during COVID, there was a bit more of relaxation.
So start early, plan your data gathering in conjunction with any clinical studies that you're doing.
And think economics also. Yeah. Think economics.
Think economics. That's a very top tip. So my next question, when we're building these models and let's assume we've got some data, what is the NHS looking for? What are NICE looking for? Are they looking for every technology to save money, or can some of them be cost neutral, or can some of them potentially be more expensive than current standard of care if the clinical outcomes are better? So where does it land, or can it be a mix? Lucy, what do you think?
So it definitely can be a mix, and will be. For those technologies that are more expensive, it's not that's not necessary to say that it does mean that the technology is not affordable, but doesn't mean that it's not providing value for money. And so, a technology could be more expensive, but it could also be providing higher clinical benefit for that. For instance, increasing quality of life or patient survival. And that's when you would conduct something like a cost effectiveness analysis in order to weigh up those additional costs to generate that additional benefit of health or to population health. And that's really what NICE have said in the evidence standards framework. For all technologies, a budget impact assessment is kind of going to be the minimum kind of gold standard level evidence or health economic evidence that should be aspiring to hit. But for those technologies that are deemed to be higher financial risks, of likely to cost the NHS more money than what they're currently spending, cost effectiveness will be necessary.
So there's that two levels of modelling. You get budget impact analysis for most technologies and cost effectiveness for ones that are the more expensive. Is that about right? And Anna, any other types of models apart from the two that Lucy's mentioned?
The RAB scenario models, decision trees, Markov change, which are recursive decision trees. But going back perhaps to the original question about whether incremental costs are tolerated, I think they are tolerated, but there is a bit of a distinction between economics and finance, and more often than not, we deal with senior finance officers. I've written in finance magazines in the NHS that they are hard pressed for return investment in year one, and sometimes that is not really realistic. And the NHS looks at finance, and the finance pressures are normally what mandate what is going to happen with investment, and the economic analysis is more done in more research environments. So what I often say is that in year 1 and 2, normally the burden of the investment is there. So we need to accept that the return investment needs to happen in a long, what we health economists call time horizon. We need to stop wanting to see return investment, positive results in year 1, and understand, the real cycle of investment for a new technology over a longer time period. And quick wins is what a lot of the NHS wants, and is not really always possible realistically. It's not. And an incremental cost neutrality is what the NHS wants, or less cost, but we have thresholds for a reason of incremental costs that are accepted within the NICE guidelines for new technologies.
Sure, and I really understand your point there on not expecting the cost to be improved within a 1-year time frame, because presumably the deployment itself is probably the most costly part of adopting the new technology. So therefore, the first year is going to be the most expensive year. Then hopefully the costs manifest over time. In terms of measuring the value as compared to someone's quality of life, could you briefly talk about QALYs and explain perhaps to the audience how the NHS uses QALYs to assess whether a technology or any product really shows cost effectiveness? Do you want to touch on that briefly, Lucy?
Yes, so a QALY is a quality adjusted life year, and that's really a utility value, aiming to put a value to a patient's quality of life, and so a one QALY is equal to 1 year lived in full health. And what happens is that for each state of health, there's a health utility attached to it. So, for instance, a patient who had a cough could have a health utility of 0.6. And what happens is that in a health economic analysis, you'll have the number of patients that are in that health state for a certain amount of time, say it's 2 years, and you'll multiply the value, the health utility value, by the number of patients and by the length of time they're experiencing that. And in terms of UK reimbursement, QALYs are used by NICE in cost effectiveness analysis, to make a decision on whether a technology does provide value for money, with an incremental cost effectiveness ratio, which essentially is a ratio of QALYs and costs between two interventions, typically standard of care and the new health intervention that's being proposed. And although NICE don't have a clear set, well, they say they don't have a clear set threshold. All technologies that are producing or generating an additional quality adjusted life year for under 20 to £30,000 will normally be accepted or deemed to be value for money in terms of the NHS. That can vary. I mean, there are some other countries that do use the incremental cost effectiveness ratio and quality thresholds, but they are heavily, in terms of globally, the UK relies on them the most.
And so that's in a cost effectiveness model, you produce some kind of incremental cost ratio,
yes,
as compared with that quality that you just mentioned. And it's a nice look at that evidence, and if it was positive and saving qualities, then it might get a recommendation. And do companies then have to publish these models that they've built, or can you just build them in-house and then show them to NICE but not have them published? Or what's best practice in this situation, do you know?
I think a collaboration. I mean, we cannot it's not good practice to say, oh, this is our evidence of what we've been doing. So we present evidence and within the framework of NICE. I mean, what Lucy is really describing is the health currency. In economic analysis, you have money, or something costs, and the health currency, which is rather difficult to calculate for the lay person, but it's something that people self-report, so you need to do a self-reported service and things. So we engage with other organizations that transparently and independently evaluate the sort of technologies we are implementing. And
do people publish these models to make them more widely available, or do they keep them in-house as a kind of competitive advantage?
We aim to publish.
Where would you publish? What kind of journal? Where would you publish?
Well, the most common publications are in sector specific, but we aim to publish, in reputable places where everyone can access.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Open source.
So moving into sort of AI in radiology space, there's obviously this new AI diagnostic fund where, as of the time of recording, waiting to hear who's received the money, but let's assume a chest x-ray company has got some money, or some trusts have got some money to use one of these products. Should they be building health economic modelling into their evaluation? It seems to me from this conversation that they probably should have planned it already. So Surabhi, what's your take on this?
So sort of we'll try and answer it in two pieces. The first and foremost is that the NICE guideline that has come out particularly for chest x-ray, and that's one of the focus areas for the AI Diagnostic Fund as well, has thankfully identified sort of gaps within the existing evidence published that exists in the domain across vendors. And that gap analysis sort of helps all of us that are bidding for or applying for the AIDF, as well as the networks that are participating in it, to have a sense of opportunity, funding, time. A lot of the factors that both Anna and Lucy highlighted are typical challenges with building cost effectiveness models or building a successful business case. It's a great opportunity to sort of work over 2 years, have geographic diversity in data, multiple networks participating, multiple vendors participating, to be able to collect enough evidence for NICE collectively to look at the pathway as a whole and where AI can bring value within the pathway. So I think all of us collectively would be working towards that. The fund also provides or sort of emphasizes on evaluation. So a lot of the parameters that both Lucy and Anna covered, more from a generic health economic model or cost effectiveness model, sort of look at 3 value propositions from an AI. The first and foremost is performance itself. Clinically, is it doing the task that it's or the problem that it's trying to solve in the context, and its performance thereof. So it would look at things like sensitivity, specificity, negative predictive value, threshold adjustment, etc. More of the technical performance of the AI itself. The second would be the operational value, and I know there were some questions around data. So data is one part of the challenge. The second challenge is a lot of the practical operational parameters that you would want, where you want to talk about the turnaround times. For example, everybody knows the NHS has challenges with ER turnaround times, for example, or delayed lung cancer, long wait times for diagnostic tests. So you want to also identify what is the operational value that you want the system to derive from this. And again, from an IDF perspective, NHS England has quite nicely outlined what is the operational value that the NHS as a health system wants from particularly their diagnostic pathways. So that gives us the opportunity to capture data around time to report, time to CT, time to reporting, backlog clearance, a lot of the typical challenges that we all know exist within NHS departments. And the last one, which is most critical from a business case and actual procurement perspective, like Anna said, with decades of experience across NHS procurement, is that convincing the execs that there is a value in terms of bringing an innovation in beyond the clinical, patient and health system value. It has the monetary value. And I think that is something that there are smaller attempts that have been done. Even representing Qure, I can say we've done some ROI calculator models which are fairly high level, which talk about just the dollar value or the pound value. Can you have radiographers reporting instead of radiologists and have that monetary benefit? Could we help reduce some of your outsourcing costs? Can we help deal with your backlogs? So which is not a very complex model looking at all the different variables that might exist in the real world, but is just looking at the radiology workflow itself and trying to see how can there be value today. As we build more upon it, we would want to look at the operational value poly across the lung cancer pathway, for example, and looking at the operational value, the time released into the system. Can we potentially sort of take away the workload of your normal x-rays? So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to try and tap into.
Brilliant. And the cost, the ROI calculator you mentioned, obviously Lucy helped build that. Lucy, do you want to just cover where the ROI calculator fits into the wider ecosystem of health economics and what we've managed to build with Qure to help them have those commercial conversations?
Obviously the health economics is about demonstrating the value of a technology, but then also the models that are built also have value as a negotiation tool and can support companies in their conversations with payers. So the ROI tool that we have been developing with Qure over the past couple of years is really also focused on being an interactive tool, flexible model that individual trust level data can be inputted to in order to generate bespoke calculations to kind of empower them to make the right decisions, which goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of what health economics is and what we're aiming to do, which is support decision makers when it comes to the allocation of resources within healthcare systems.
But that model itself is not enough for NICE. We need to go further.
No.
Gather that good quality data that Anna was talking about.
Yeah. Because within the ROI tool, we have just looked at a subset of value outcomes and drivers. We haven't necessarily mapped out complete patient pathways or aim to quantify the non-monetary benefits of the technology, such as the quality of life and the survival. So that really will be the next step for Qure with that particular therapy area and product. However, it has definitely provided an excellent starting point and highlighted where future kind of research and health economic work is needed.
I'm going to go to a few of the questions now that have come in via the chat. Some good points are being made here. A question for anyone who wants to answer. Are there issues specific to just AI which makes the acquiring of specific health economic data more difficult than other things, maybe drugs or hardware medical devices? Do you have any thoughts on this? Is there anything about AI specifically that we're finding it difficult to capture as an industry?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll take that one. AI is still relatively new. I know we've seen the sector take a lot of leaps and bounds over the last 5 years or so. We've also seen sort of commercially with examples like ChatGPT how fast AI can evolve. I think that's the first time almost everybody has played around with AI in the real world. One of the challenges has been that typically for medical devices or for pharmaceutical drugs, there was a set process of generating evidence, which was randomized controlled trials, clinical studies, and then sort of using that same data to build health economic models. AI, because it got built out more as a computer software, has had a slightly different pathway towards getting to that same eventual stage, I would say. So even if we look at the NICE guidelines right now, for an example, they've identified sort of 3-4 gap areas on the chest X-ray AI for lung cancer. And broad-based, a lot of those questions sort of get answered by either large-scale service evaluations or by randomized clinical trials. And like Anna had mentioned before, it takes time and effort and funding to be able to set that up. So even when we were going through that list after the guideline came out, and some of the pieces NICE is also aware of. So for example, we have done a fairly large-scale service evaluation with Greater Manchester across 6 different trusts in the region, where we were looking at interpretation of chest X-ray scans from different pathways with AI, and particularly looking at how well AI findings correlate with incidence of lung cancer, which pathologies of lung cancer need to be prioritized. So that's a paper that's being written up, but that's one of the gaps that NICE had highlighted within the report that they've come out with. The second one specifically mentions PPI and health economics, that there isn't enough evidence for that exists today. And again, similarly, it took Qure and NIHR and SBRI Cancer and NHS England funded fairly large-scale grant project to have the resources, have enough sites with diversity to be able to build a robust health economic model. And while the model is there, you can only plug it with data once you've completed your RCT. So there are efforts underway already, I would say, both on patient awareness side and health economics. We're doing another work with Hardian Health, which is looking at the ER triage pathway for head CT, which looks at operational value. Can we triage critical scans? What's the quality for stroke patients, ischemic and hemorrhagic traumatic brain injuries? So there is efforts that are underway. I think if you give it another 2 years, you would see a lot of this published. and at the level of robustness that exists today for medtech and pharma companies.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while we're going to see an uptick in health economic publications around AI, and as always, radiology is leading the pack across medicine. That there have been some health economic studies published in other areas of medicine related to AI. I've seen some endoscopy AI related products have some health economic evidence generated, but still not enough for NICE. Next question. I think this has got Anna's name written all over it. There's a lot of radiologists who talk about using synthetic data for machine learning training. Can we use synthetic data in health economic modelling? Is that possible?
Yes. I am all about, I mean, in absence of the data, the synthetic data is data that resembles, depending how good that data is, to emulate what we want to emulate. But I would say yes, it's much needed to sort of emulate data sets that resemble what we are gathering while we are gathering in time to actually fit our models. Yes, synthetic data in health economics is widely used, and while we build models and theoretic models, those models evolve depending on the data. It's a bit like the chicken and the egg. You feed data and you adapt the model, and then you feed more data. But really, we are in a, as Surabhi mentioned, we are collecting that data. And in the meanwhile, we need to start building those models that fit the NICE requirements. So yes, synthetic data is a good way forward. But it needs to actually resemble what we are gathering. And we have in some more study sites, we have small data sets, and we know what things look like or will look like, and that is a good way for us forward.
So there we go. You can use synthetic data, presumably not for your final model. That has to be done on real data, but you can use synthetic data to help
to tune the model. To tune the model.
Fantastic. Good top tip. Another question. Is there an organisation which NHS trusts can approach to discuss their specific economic feasibility in deploying AI tools, as experience of this within organisations is non-existent? I would say that you would need help from some independent health economics consultancy, like Hardian. I am biased, others do exist as well, of course. But also you can approach NICE, can't you? Lucy, do you want to answer this question? What do NICE offer for early stage companies wanting to get into health economics?
Yes, they do offer a service where you can submit the evidence that you do have, and they will provide, I think that it was the medtech briefings, but I think now changed to something else. I can't remember exactly the name of it now.
Is it HTA? Early health assessment.
Yeah, it's the IDAP, the Innovative Diagnostic something pathway.
This pathway.
Yeah, access.
Or there is also the EVA, the Early Value Assessment Technology Appraisal, but I think that's for a bit further on. That's when you have some form of evidence or an idea, rather than the kind of feasibility stage kind of developing a product. But also, I think reaching out to individual clinicians in the specific therapy area that you're targeting is also a really good thing to do. And at the start of any health economic kind of project, it's one of the first questions we ask the companies that we work with: have you spoken to stakeholders within the NHS? Because from those conversations you can very quickly get an idea of where or if there is going to be any kind of economic value to a technology.
Where can NHS trusts go to get this help? The question has been clarified.
Yeah. So
Anna, where do NHS trusts go?
I mean, NHS trusts can go to commission support organizations that are sort of arm length from, but they are normally data science and gather the data. They would will help you gather the data and do some statistical analysis. They are not experts in economics analysis. So yes, they tend to be a tendency to go to external organizations for lack of that expertise. Is very rare within the NHS, really. Apart, but perhaps in sectors where there are policy development, like the Department of Health, there is a need. So it's those niche teams are usually in very specific areas and is within the Department of Health.
Yeah, and another commenter has said that universities are also a good option.
Yes,
so,
universities. Definitely.
Universities, independent health consultancies. There's a plethora of them, and it's only a growing sector. There's not many models published, as we've discussed. Certainly not enough for NICE to give anyone a thumbs up, but the future hopefully is bright. So I think we're going to bring this to a close, but I think what we're going to do is just summarise the key points here. So first of all, you need health economics evidence if you want to sell to the NHS. It's a value-based system, and NICE is pretty much the gatekeeper on this. There is an evidence standards framework that they've released. We encourage everyone to go and look at the NICE evidence standards framework and decide what type of health economic modelling you need. And then, as Anna has said multiple times during this excellent session, start early and try and collect as good data as possible, because that's going to set you up for success. Surabhi, the other final point that I wanted to make was to watch this space. We've been working with you and Qure for a while now. We've got some models coming out soon, but in the meantime, what do you want to say to trusts who aren't sure about the financial aspects of the chest X-ray tool? What would you like to say?
I think definitely looking at some of the questions that have come in from the audience, our experience also has been that you won't find maybe in-house expertise within an NHS trust or a network to be able to gauge mathematically whether something makes business sense. I think that's where some of the frameworks that have come out recently are helpful, where they've at least given you the buckets, or they've given you a high-level evaluation framework that if you're looking at clinical value, this is what you should look at or measure for, which is something you could do locally. If you're looking at operational value, these are the endpoints that you need to look at. So even in the absence of a full model for your local context, you could use those endpoints to define what success of AI in your pathway means. Something that we usually try to tell most clinicians by asking a lot of questions and boring them is what is actually your intended use? What is the clinical problem that you're trying to solve? So even chest X-ray AI is a technology. It's not till it's in your clinical practice, you define what that product or use case means for you. So whether you're a trust that's outsourcing a lot, that has big backlogs, doesn't have enough radiologists, then what the value that you're looking for from AI is actually for speed and for workload reduction. So then you would want to look at your whole business case as, can my AI look at, is my AI regulatory cleared to look at normals and abnormals? If it can sort out normals, can I get a radiographer to report it? Can I bargain for a better rate from my teleradiology provider? Can I potentially use it to sort of audit my junior staff and make sure things are not getting missed out? If you're looking at the lung cancer pathway, if the budget is going to come from your Cancer Alliance or your ICS specifically for faster diagnosis, then you want to look at, can the AI, do they have the capability to look at findings relevant for lung cancer? Can they triage scans on my work list so that my suspicious lung cancer patients are not lying in a pile of cheapy scans, can be moved to the top of the work list? So to answer the question for your trust or your network, whether it makes sense for you, whether it's a sustainable business option for you, you need to sort of start by defining your problem, identifying if your AI can solve for it, determining how would you measure if it's solving for it, and then sort of once you have it in practice, then sort of running that whole evaluation exercise, because some of these data points you can get from your system. Others, of course, then reach out to your AHS and reach out to your university partners and see if somebody is willing to build out a health economic model for you, or do a basic sense check from a procurement standpoint. Is it cost effective to get that AI into practice?
And last question quickly, Surabhi, if anyone watching wants to have a play with your ROI calculator for chest x-ray, who should they get in touch with?
They can reach out to our Qure contacts ID. It's already floated out. They can also reach out to any of us directly on LinkedIn. We're fairly responsive. If you have your basic trust numbers, like your volumes of chest x-rays, how much are you reporting in-house, what are you outsourcing, what are you insourcing, sort of what is your split, what pathway do you want to look at? Do you want to look at A&E? Do you want to look at GP and lung cancer? The model sort of has that logical framework built in, so that we could plug and play the trust specific numbers and be able to give a high level overview of what is the ballpark of benefits that they're looking at. And we do provide for different scenarios, so they can look at whether they want their standard of care, which is radiologist alone, to be replaced by AI plus rad or AI plus radiographer. So we have that flexibility with both standard of care as well as the AI supported pathway, and it will generalize well enough for their sort of specific use case. And
Brilliant.
Connect with. Thanks everyone for joining. Happy to answer or have a play around with the model with any of you that are keen.
Brilliant. Well, with that, I think we'll draw to an end. Thank you to you three, Anna, Lacey and Surabhi. Thank you to the audience for attending. I hope you found that useful. I've been Dr. Harvey, and we'll be saying goodbye. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you too.
Thanks everyone.